Welcome to Accounting High.
The controller takes control of that process and gives you more control over your finances.
Why it's called a controller is because they set up controls. And what that means is they're basically setting up processes to reduce the risk that the business can be stolen from.
And this is what gives you more visibility too. Like once you start creating these systems, you have somebody control all that, then really you've got full oversight on everything that's going on through just a couple of reports. It's kind of like the example of trying to figure it out yourself and then getting somebody to come in and be like, oh, wow, why wasn't I always doing this? Why couldn't it always just be this easy?
Why didn't I just move closer to the receiver?
Check out the cash flow show. We discuss topics like getting paid on time, profitability, and managing your bottom line, payroll best practices, the best apps to use, and cash flow forecasting tools. So if you're a small business owner, your help's right around the corner. Fret not. Tune in as Scott and Nikole help you reach your goals on the cash flow show. The cash flow show. Listen and learn. We'll show you how to pay yourself on what your business earns. With Nikole and OKR.
What's up, Nikole?
Hey, Scotty. What is good?
What's going on? I don't know. I'm trying to find the remote control for the TV here. The controller. Where's our controller?
I have a funny story about remote controls. We couldn't get the TV to work. And of course, I don't do anything with the TV. I don't know how to use the TV. Mike's always handled the TV. The screen was stuck on this page saying that it couldn't put batteries in your remote or whatever. So Mike put batteries in it, blah, 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 couldn't get to work. So we get the Comcast guy to come over and he takes basically the remote wasn't in range. You had to go up to the receiver and just click a button. And so he was there for 1 second and it was pretty funny.
I don't know if I like when that happens, where you toil with something forever and you realize how easy it would have been to fix.
He went down and got a new remote, everything. He spent hours.
That's the case in a lot of our businesses too. We do that in our business practice. We try to work on something forever and we realize if we just had somebody else come in, could have done it that much quicker.
Sometimes it just takes the expert coming in.
Yeah, you need the expert. Controllers, talking about remote controls and controllers is probably a good segue into our topic of today, right? Seven signs your business needs a controller, not a remote controller.
Not a remote controller.
But a controller. What's a controller, Nikole?
A financial controller. So a lot of business owners have heard bookkeeper, they've probably heard CFO, but for some reason, I don't know why controllers don't get a lot of representation, but a controller is basically a more advanced version of a bookkeeper. So typically a bookkeeper may not have an accounting background, have actually learned debits or credits or have an accounting degree. They may have just picked up, learning how to enter transactions into accounting software, pay bills, send out invoices, but they are not experienced in knowing how to do accrual-based accounting or financial reporting. A quote I heard recently from Joe Woodard actually on a podcast was, a bookkeeper records what happened, a controller affects what happened.
I listened to that yesterday.
Yeah. So I thought that was a good quote.
So they affect what happens.
And so usually businesses start feeling the need for a controller, a piece of a controller, as they start approaching $1 million in revenue, because things just start to get a little more complicated in the business. And so they get to the point where they're outgrow whatever resource they're using, whether it be a part-time bookkeeper or a spouse or their CPA firm's doing it. They might start thinking, oh man, I feel like I need, a term I've heard is, I feel like I need more mid-level support.
Mid-level support. Ah, okay.
So the controller is like the glue between the bookkeeper and the CFO.
They are controlling what happens too. In a lot of ways, I love that point of you affect and you can have an impact on what's happening with your clients. So you're taking on a more active role with your clients. The first person who ever used this term to me was you. First person I ever heard talk about controllership services or controller or becoming a client's controller was when I met you at Zero, and you were talking about what you do for your clients. And I didn't even know what CAS was at the time too. So hearing this was also foreign to me.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So a common career path for accountants, if they go into public accounting, can be to go work an audit for a while and then get a job in-house. Sometimes they're clients. So a client of the audit firm may recruit their auditor to be their controller. That's typically a good career path. So I remember I had chosen to do tax route. So I did audit and then I did tax. And then I was in a situation where I was interested in becoming a controller in-house at a business, but because I had a tax background, it was a little more challenging. So that might be why you hadn't heard of a controller, because your path was more tax focused.
Yeah, more tax focused and not necessarily private in that area. And maybe I heard it before, but it was just one of those things that I didn't really pay much attention to because I didn't think that a firm like ours would be doing that. Or at least I never thought that was possible. So let's kind of go back into, I took us a little bit off track.
So let's get into the 7 signs that your business needs a controller.
So what's the first sign?
So the first one is if you're having reporting challenges. So if your reports are frequently delayed or you feel like they're inaccurate, that would be a sign that you need a controller. Typically, in terms of when reports should be delivered to you, and these are your standard set of financial statements right out of QuickBooks Online or Xero, you should be, if you have an in-house accountant, you really should be getting those by like the 10th of the month. If you're outsourcing, definitely no later than the 30th of the month following the prior month close. Nowadays, if you're using technology, you should be able to close, like at Momentum, we're doing the bookkeeping on a weekly basis. So the financials are like probably 90% there by at all times. And then the controller is coming in doing that like last 10% month end close, getting the reports to the point where they're usable for the business owner and finalized.
Okay. You're able to get that turned around a lot quicker because you're doing it weekly. And you've talked about this weekly cycle before.
Right, exactly. And then also with those reports, you want to make sure. So another sign in terms of reporting challenges is lack of detailed financial insight, which leads to challenges in making informed business decisions. So that's that last 10% that the controller is doing, right? So at Momentum, when we onboard a new client, we're setting up their chart of accounts, setting up their profit and loss statement in a way that allows the business owner to start looking at margins, to start looking at profitability by different service lines. So your controller is going to do all that sort of stuff. They're going to make sure you're on accrual basis. They're going to make sure your COGS and your direct costs and your overhead costs get categorized properly. Overall, just making sure that you have things set up in a way so you can start doing analysis, making decisions. And typically a bookkeeper is not going to be at that skill set where they can do that for you.
And that starts with not having reports on time. Like that's, at first you got to just get these things, put them together and get them in on time. That's the first sign. Second sign is probably why somebody would be listening to the show in the first place, right? Cash flow problems.
Yep. Cash flow, definitely. Again, the bookkeeper's good at doing the data input, but as far as actually managing the business from a high level, they're not going to be doing that. And you'll start feeling that in your cash flow. So one issue you might have is difficulty forecasting future cash needs, particularly if you have seasonality or a long cash conversion cycle. So a controller can help by setting up a really good accounts payable process so you know what's coming due, and then also setting up possibly a short-term cash flow sheet for you so you can manage your cash better. And then they'll also help you be more accountable in setting up cash reserves. Again, if you're a seasonal business, you may make a lot of money in part of the year, like tax firms, right? You're making money if you're not billing on recurring. You may make your money in your busy season. And then you have to make sure that you have enough reserve set aside to then get through possibly 3-4 months of low season so you can keep your people employed.
What's a cash flow sheet?
Oh, good question. So that's just something that you might do in like Google Sheets, Excel, It basically forecasts the next couple weeks coming up to make sure you're not missing payroll, to make sure you're able to make all your recurring
It's
ACH
sort of like a
payments.
baby forecast, little baby.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to
mini
put it.
forecast.
It's a mini. Yeah, I've talked about this before. It's a 2-week cash flow forecast we do. It's more of just making sure that you can make payroll, and then anything basically gives you guidance on what bills you can afford to pay over the next 2 weeks.
It's a teeny tiny forecast.
Teeny tiny.
Yeah.
One more
about
point
cash
on the
flow.
cash flow management. So that's the first point was forecasting forecasting future cash needs and setting up an AP process. They can also help make sure that have good processes for cash inflow, right? So making sure invoices go out on time, making sure you have a collections process, things like that. So getting money in the door quicker and monitoring that.
Another concern is getting money in and keeping it in and preventing theft or fraud. So you could have cash flow, but then that cash could be sieving out and leaking in other places. And concerns of fraud would be a third sign that you would need a controller. So tell me about that.
Yep. So the third sign is concerns about theft or fraud, or if you had that occur. A controller, why it's called a controller is because they set up controls. And what that means is they're basically setting up processes to reduce the risk that the business can be stolen from. As an example, making sure, you never want to give an employee full access to move money out of your bank account, or use a company card without some sort of monitoring system like setting limits or a receipt management policy. Another example would be you don't want the same person who is reconciling your bank account to also have full control of paying bills, because they could make up a fake vendor, pay it, and then reconcile that transaction and nobody ever sees that, right? Another example would be setting up approvals in your bill pay process. So using a system like bill.com, we can set up approvals so that nobody can pay a bill until it's been approved by the CEO. So a controller is going to have experience implementing those controls and basically hopefully eliminating any chance that someone would steal from you.
So the controller takes control of that process and gives you more control over your finances.
Have you ever had a client who was stolen from? Any examples?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the most recent. It's typically something that's like a known family member or somebody that's been close to them for a long time. And I can think of a number of examples, but it's always somebody that they trusted the most and that they put their most trust in for everything. And so it's always a people problem that I've seen.
Yeah, and usually it's just one person, it's like one in-house bookkeeper. So we've had that. Yeah. I've had that happen where like one lady was writing checks to herself for years, but nobody was, again, there was no controls. There wasn't a secondary person checking, doing, segregation of duties there. And then I had another client where we were actually playing that controller role and the bookkeeper role, but he had a company credit card, American Express, and he was putting 99-cent charge, like I think over 3 months had accumulated $400,000 worth of charges, 99 cents here and there. And then we found out later he was using it to look at what girls on the internet.
Oh, wow.
Probably OnlyFans or something. Yeah. So luckily we had oversight there, right? Prior to us coming on, they had already had fraud occur, embezzlement happen. And luckily we were there. Otherwise, they had gone a couple of years without any financial oversight. Who knows what happened during those 2 years, but you need multiple layers of people in your accounting department.
Oh yeah, for sure. For any of these things. And this is what gives you more visibility too. Like once you start creating these systems, you have somebody control all that, then really you've got full oversight on everything that's going on through just a couple reports too. It's kind of like the example of trying to figure it out yourself and then getting somebody to come in and be like, oh wow, why wasn't I always doing this? Why couldn't it always just be this easy?
Why didn't I just move closer to the receiver?
So the fourth sign of why or how you would need a controller.
Signs that you might need a controller. So sign number 4 is overdependence on bookkeeper oversight. So basically what this means is that you as the owner are constantly finding errors in the bookkeeper's work. You're like following up of why they didn't go. You're bugging them about why they didn't follow up with a past due customer. You're getting reports inconsistently. You're getting them late. Just basically you're managing the accounting process too much as the CEO, and you don't have an accounting background. So it puts you in this weird spot where you're trying to manage a function that you don't actually have expertise in.
Ooh, that could be very difficult. I could only imagine. So you've got no oversight in what's going on. You don't trust the person that's doing it, and you don't understand what they're doing in the first place. So you can't really help them. And so it's a very stressful situation. I can only imagine what that builds up and turns into during tax time.
I see that a lot. I also see business owners relying on an admin or a director of operations and putting them in this seat and saying, hey, you manage QuickBooks. And then it puts that COO or admin person in a really weird spot because the CEO is like, this is part of your job description. And then they're like, I don't know how to use QuickBooks. I don't know how to do accounting. And then they're trying to like go on the side, take courses or listen to podcasts to try to understand it. And they really shouldn't be put in that situation. They should be spending their time doing things that are more productive.
Yeah. You don't want to put somebody in the wrong seat. You could have the right person for your company in the wrong seat, and then everybody suffers.
Yeah, and maybe they can help with processing invoices or bills or something like that, but give them an advisor level of oversight, this controller person that can at least guide them, check their work, give them a process.
So you could still have that person, but the controller oversees that for you.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. There's always potential for training.
So what's the fifth sign that your business may need a controller?
Sign number 5 is spend management challenges. So at a certain size, your business may get to the point where you want to delegate spending. So you may have a marketing department, a sales, IT, right? And you want to give these people a budget that they can use and then maybe give them a company credit card. So part of the controller's job might be creating a budget, working with the different departments to set up a budget, and then also effective spend management processes. So that might be setting up a receipt policy, setting up, like I mentioned earlier, the max amount that a individual user of a credit card can spend in a day or spend in a week. And so they may be implementing tools that spend management tools like a Divvy or a Ramp or Expensify, some sort of system to help make that process a little more automated.
And does the controller handle the spending too, or this has nothing to do with paying anything, does it? Paying bills or things like that?
Correct. So this is more of like monitoring other people's spend and setting up, going back to our controls, right? So one, making sure that there's controls, limits, all of that, and then managing what the expectations are if they should be able to spend and making sure that aligns with the initial budget, and then giving the business owner maybe more detailed breakdown. So you might get into in QuickBooks Online and Xero, right? There's classes or tracking categories. So maybe the CEO wants to see spend by department. So the controller is setting up processes and ways so that they can serve up that information to the owner.
Yeah, that's again affecting what's happening too.
Yeah, because then it's giving the business more control, more insight into where they're spending money, more detailed, granular information. But in order to do that, you have to set up systems in your ops side. You can't just say, hey, we're going to start tracking by department. Okay, well, as the accountant, how do we know who spent? You have I've seen this with clients where they have one credit card that gets passed around the office, and then somebody can go take the card out of the drawer and then they go spend it and then they put a receipt in there. Just like, hey, let's set up some better processes here so that we can actually start getting more granular with our data.
Yeah. So what's the sixth sign?
Sixth sign, something I see happen a lot, is the CFO spends too much time doing accounting procedures. So as the CFO role is interesting because you can be a CFO with having no accounting background, So your career path may be a finance background. You find yourself in the CFO role. And there's a lot of CFOs that actually have no idea how to do accounting. I was talking to a prospect the other day who's like the director of finance at the startup, and he's like worked at some large company before. And he was like, I used to just get all these reports and then I would do my modeling. I didn't even know how they were created, right? So you get people like that. And then you also, so they probably would be quick to go hire an accountant. But then you also have CFOs whose career path may have come from an accounting background. And so they are actually able to get into the accounting process a little bit, but it's not the highest and best use of their time. And that's typically because there's a gap between, so they may have a bookkeeper and then they may have a CFO. And then there's this gap where you really need a controller so that the controller is managing the process, the accounting process, month-end close process, and the bookkeeper. And then the CFO is able to focus more on strategic initiatives.
Yeah. Freeing the CFO up from mundane, routine, simple tasks is a necessity. That
Simple
is
tasks.
absolutely, you're paying somebody too much to be doing that.
Was that
So
was simple task? Was that one of your
that
first?
was my first rap video.
That was your very first
Yeah.
rap.
It's my very first rap video.
Kenji yelling,
Music
simple
video, yeah.
tasks.
Simple tasks rule everything around me.
That was good. So
Seventh sign that your
This-
business needs a
Go ahead.
controller.
seventh sign.
No, I was just gonna seventh sign.
Seventh sign that your business may need a controller is that you have third-party reliance on your financials. For example, you want to get a loan or you have a loan. And so typically when you get a loan with a bank, they have requirements, and part of the loan covenant, you have to report your financials on a quarterly basis. And so initially to even get that loan, you need clean financials that they trust. And then you also have that recurring reporting requirement. Another example would be if you have investors, right? You want to build trust. You need good financials to present in front of investors. And then potential buyers. So if you want to sell your business, if you have a controller in place, you're going to be ready to sell your business at any time, right? You have those financials ready to go. You can produce them. What happens a lot with businesses, they're like, oh, I want to sell my business. And then they get introduced to a broker, and then the broker looks at their financial statements and they're like, yeah, I can't put these in front of a buyer. They don't make any sense. So then the seller has to go back and put together multiple years of financial statements that actually make sense, because you can't, usually a buyer wants to see like the last 3 years. And so if you go back and just do 1 year, then you have 1 year that's clean and 2 years that, and then they can't model out really apples to apples what happened over those last 3 years. So then you get yourself into having to do this huge project to sell your business. And so we don't want to get into that situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And having a controller really streamlines all of that. It's what they're made for.
That's what they're made for.
At any time.
At any time. And then another person who may rely on those financials is the CFO or another advisor. So common situation is a business is struggling, so they bring in an advisor. The advisor comes on. It's like maybe the business owner knows in their head what's happening. The financials don't make sense to that advisor. And in order for that advisor to actually be useful to the business owner, they need to be able to look at financial statements that make sense. And so they may go say, hey, you need to hire a controller, get these financials in order before I can even give you any advice. And then a CFO needs clean financials to do forecasting. So you may bring a CFO on and they may like, I can't help you because your financials aren't on accrual basis. They don't make any sense. I can't do a model based on this. So that's when you might need a controller to come on.
Yeah. Lots of benefits to hiring a controller. Are we going to talk about the benefits, or are we going to talk about how?
Yeah. So basically the benefits of having a controller is you're going to have better cash flow. You'll have better spend management policies. You'll stay on budget. You're less likely to have to deal with theft or fraud. You can sell your business quickly if you need to. You'll have better use of your resources. So within an accounting department, right, we've talked about this of wanting to push down the work as much as possible. So we don't want the CFO doing bookkeeping. We don't want the controller doing bookkeeping. We want everybody in the right seat at the right amount of work that's necessary for your business.
So whatever reasons you may have, you may find yourself in that stage where you need to hire a controller. How would they go about doing that? How would they find a controller? If they're not getting an audit right now. They're not going to be able to poach it from the company that's doing the audit.
Yeah. So it depends if, most small businesses do not need a full-time controller. In fact, most of them may need a controller like 5 to 10 hours a month, realistically, right? So that's one of the values. So there's a few different ways that you can do it. So at Momentum, our clients outsource their full accounting department to us. And so we've got levels of people on our team that can help them with these sorts of things. If you have an in-house bookkeeper, our preference is we're not typically playing the controller role if they have an in-house bookkeeper. So there are other services where you can hire a fractional on an hourly basis or retainer controller that will manage your in-house bookkeeper. Usually those models are more hourly based, because the problem if you have an in-house bookkeeper, we can't control if they're good or not. And so that's why there's those like my friend works for Now CFO, and they do everything on an hourly basis. It's just like, hey, you need a controller, we'll get this person in. And then you might get to a point where it makes it's more
What kind of rates would they typically expect to pay for an hourly?
You may pay anywhere from like high, like close to 200, over 200. So like 195 to 250 an hour, depending on the experience, unless you're going straight through finding someone directly who's just doing like contract work on their own. But if you're going through a firm or a service like that, you're probably going to that's going to be the standard rate. So after a certain point, if they're working enough hours, it might make sense for you to hire an in-house controller. So if that's the case and you're looking for an in-house controller, you're looking for somebody who actually has a degree in accounting or has a lot of accounting experience working under a controller. They may have a public accounting background. So that's very common. Like I was saying at the beginning of the episode, for an accountant to go into public accounting. Public accounting is, again, getting your CPA, usually the CPA route, right? You get your CPA license and then you get experience. The thing about people who work in public is just how quickly they learn working with lots of different businesses. Whereas if you go straight to in-house, you may have experience working with 1 or 2 businesses, 3 businesses over your entire career. Whereas public accounting, you're like drinking from a fire hose. You're learning about all sorts of different industries. You're seeing all sorts of different problems. So typically people from public have a lot of experience. You're looking for someone that has GAAP experience. So GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles. You're looking for someone that maybe has their CPA license. CPA license is always a solid choice, but they may be more expensive, right? If you're hiring a full-time person, you may not need a CPA, but they're probably going to be pretty good if they're a CPA. And then they may have worked for an outsourced accounting firm like Momentum, right? So that's a good solid choice, someone from that type of firm. Or they may have a certified management accountant designation.
And if you don't hire somebody full-time, you could always outsource.
You got it.
That's where they would hire somebody like Momentum.
Yep. Get it all in one.
All under one roof. What questions might people have about this? Or where could they ask those questions? If anybody has questions about hiring a controller.
Yeah, if anybody has questions about hiring a controller, you can definitely reach out to me. Go to our website and there's a contact form there, or you can just ping me on LinkedIn. And that's Nikole, the K, Nikole Mackenzie. And our website is momentumaccounting.com.
If you have any further questions about that, I don't know if I could answer all of these questions about controller. I'm just diving into it, but you know what? I will be able to answer them soon. I'm learning. Let's recap everything that you may need to consider as your business grows to that point. So you've already approached $1 million. Your business is over $1 million. That's one sign that you've hit that point where you would even need one. If your business is smaller than that, you're probably too small to really need a lot of these services.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just go back through the 7 signs again and summarize. So sign 1, you're having reporting challenges. That could be either not getting them on time or not getting the insights out of them that you want. Sign number 2, cash flow management challenges. Sign number 3, concerns about theft or fraud. Sign number 4, you're managing the bookkeeper too much. Sign number 5, you have spend management challenges. So you want to delegate spend to other employees and you need a process for that. Sign number 6, your CFO is spending too much time doing accounting procedures. And sign number 7, you have a third parties that rely on your financials.
Great. This is it. This is it. Everything that you need to know about when and how to hire, or signs that you need to hire a controller.
And if you like our show, please subscribe and please leave us a review, because that gives us encouragement to keep doing this, because it takes a lot of time and energy. So we want to make sure that you guys like it. And if you have any recommendations on how we could be better, or any topics that you'd like us to address, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Hit us up. Please leave a review, because that's how more people will find us too. So if you're listening on Apple Podcast, go ahead and click that little 5-star thing. Write us something. We'll read it on air. More reviews we'll open it up with that. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and if you're part of any
show.
business communities, anything like that, and you feel this would be valuable for them, we'd love it if you would share it with your peers as well.
Oh, that's how everybody finds out about it. Peer-to-peer sharing. Share in your Slack groups or in your Facebook groups and everything else. This has been the Cash Flow Show. Peace out, homies.
Peace out.
Yeah. So you're drowning in cash flow issues. You run a business, but feel like it's running you. Customers won't pay, but you got bills due. It appears you won't have enough for payroll coming up soon. It seems like you're running nowhere fast. You work hard, but never able to withdraw cash from the business. You get more customers, hire more employees, but still take home hardly anything. You feel like you're on a hamster wheel, frustrated cause the battle's always uphill. Even though you got a bookkeeper on your team, they send you reports, but you don't really know what they mean. Your CPA doesn't understand a thing about your business, at least that's how it seems. But if you want to get above water and grow, check out the Cash Flow Show. This is the Cash Flow Show, where we help the small business gain momentum and become profitable. This is the Cash Flow Show. Listen and learn. We'll show you how to pay yourself on what your business earns. Cash Flow Show. Discuss topics like getting paid on time, profitability, and managing your bottom line, payroll best practices, the best apps to use, and cash flow forecasting tools. So if you're a small business owner, your help's right around the corner. Fret not. Tune in as Scott and Nikole help you reach your goals on the Cash Flow Show. The Cash Flow Show, where we help the small business gain momentum and become profitable. This is the Cash Flow Show. Listen and learn. We'll show you how to pay yourself on what your business earns. Cash Flow Show. Our advice will take you far. Cash Flow Show. Tune in with Nikole and OKR.